Picture this, the world is nearing the end of World War II, and with the looming collapse of Nazi Germany, a new world order was soon to become our reality. Allied countries were lining up to pick up the many pieces that the war would leave, focusing on key elements of geography, global trade, and dominance. Among these, one decision would define the course of the 20th century like no other. In 1944, 44 Allied countries which represented the infant United Nations gathered at a secluded hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The conference was aimed at deciding how the world would conduct international trade following the war, specifically so that no country would be inherently disadvantaged. At the time, the US held the world's largest reserve of gold, mainly due to its massive assistance to Allied countries during World War I. This advantage was critical, as it led the delegates at Bretton Woods to elect the US dollar as the new world reserve currency, relying on the fact that the US could peg its dollar value to the massive reserve of gold. This new doctrine, also known as the gold standard, meant that other countries could also peg their currency values to that of gold, but they would have to do so through the US dollar. As a result, the US dollar became the world's de facto reserve currency for the next 80 years. Although the gold standard system was eventually suspended during the administration of President Richard Nixon, the effects of keeping the US dollar as a reserve currency were unimaginable. This decision alone allowed the United States to be the center of global trade, solidly propelling its economy to lead those of the rest of the world. The United States became a center for manufacturing, culture, language, and finance, and remained unchallenged for many years. While the rise of globalization eventually allowed other countries to participate in this global economy, the use of the dollar as a standard currency enforced the US's position as an unchallengeable global force. However, the last 30 years have seen a massive shift in this status quo. While the US dollar still remains at the center of international finance, many countries have gained a competitive advantage through becoming centers of their own industries. For example, the Middle East became wealthy through energy production, China excelled in manufacturing, South America grew from its agriculture, and India continued to expand its massive young workforce. The one thing that remained is that all of these countries continue to transact with US dollars at the center of international trade. However, one country has done more than any other to challenge this status quo: India. In recent years, India's government and the Nationalized Reserve Bank of India have generated new initiatives that could throw the US dollar's global dominance into a tailspin. Today, we will be covering how India is changing the shape of the global economy through two main initiatives that you probably have never heard of. The first of these two critical initiatives has to do with India's new approach to international trade. For many years, global trade was always settled using the US dollar, allowing the United States to profit massively through the stability of its own currency. The trust in the US dollar has had many positive downstream effects for the United States, as the country is able to attract investment in its currency, financial instruments, and corporate institutions. However, this trust is fading for many reasons. For one, since the United States has been off the gold standard for decades, there has been a general loss in confidence in the US dollar. Without the gold standard, the US has printed trillions of unbacked dollars into circulation, causing domestic and international inflation. Furthermore, in early 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States quickly removed Russia's access to the International Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. This system, better known as SWIFT, carries out billions of transactions per year and has been used since the 1970s as a standard system for international transactions. More importantly, SWIFT settles its transactions using US dollars, meaning that America effectively controls who is able to participate in global trade. When the US evicted Russia from SWIFT, it revealed how unreliable the system might actually be, as countries can be simply blocked off from the global economy if they upset the United States. Although blocking Russia's access to SWIFT was probably the right thing to do, it waved a massive red flag to other countries whose policies also may be upsetting to the United States. In all the chaos, India saw a golden opportunity to challenge the dominance of the US dollar. Rather than simply complying with the United States-Russia ban, the Royal Bank of India made an unprecedented move in July 2022 by allowing global trade to be settled in rupees in addition to dollars. This allowed Russia to circumvent SWIFT and continue participating in global trade through India. This is a huge deal because if a large enough bank is willing to settle trade transactions in a non-dollar currency, This could really challenge the singular status of the dollar as the world reserve. Furthermore, this move dramatically increased the global utility of the rupee, meaning that many countries are far more likely to initiate trade with India in the first place. However, this is not the only big move that India has made to bolster the rupee and its position as a global trade participant. The second initiative we will discuss has to do with India's domestic payment structure. Much like the rest of the world, India previously relied on two main providers to facilitate merchant transactions throughout their country, Visa and MasterCard, both of which are American companies. What this meant is that every transaction in India which these providers facilitated would result in a 3% fee being paid out to an American business.
We did it, Joe.
However, in 2016, India introduced a new payment framework called the Unified Payments Interface. This interface, better known as UPI, was an electronic framework that would allow small businesses, merchants, service providers, and online applications to utilize a fully domestic payment network to carry out payments. Soon, tiny stalls and huge companies throughout India started to accept UPI, which allowed customers to pay simply by scanning a barcode. However, this system alone could not defeat Visa and MasterCard, as UPI only allowed debit transactions. Regardless of fees, many customers still preferred the flexibility offered through credit, so many transactions were still handled through Visa and MasterCard. However, this is now changing. Recently, UPI has allowed customers to use RuPay credit cards issued by the Reserve Bank of India in their framework. This is a huge deal, as RuPay's lower fees and domestic advantage could entirely overrun the dominance of Visa and MasterCard in India. Furthermore, as more than 1 billion Indians would start using a payment system that transacts natively in rupees, the positive effects of this on the Indian economy would be tremendous. The country would no longer face competition from American companies to facilitate payments, and money spent in India would stay within the country's borders. Through these two main initiatives of international settlement and domestic credit, India is seeking to knock the US dollar from its peg of dominance. While nobody knows the next moves India might make, it is obvious that the US dollar's certainty as a reserve currency is fading and fast. This is a really important trend, as it has the potential to disrupt an economic system that has held precedent for nearly a century. Furthermore, other countries are starting to take notice and are already beginning to allow settlement in non-US currencies, such as for oil in the Middle East or manufactured goods in China.